our WebinART dedicated to the art of Alexandra de Steiguer. Some 7 years ago, photographer, gallery artist, and friend, Tony King sent me a book called Small Island, Big Picture, Works of Alexandra de Steiguer. His inscription suggested that her work might be of interest to us. I reached out, she and I met. We were immediately taken with the art, and on the spot, we acquired 2 of her works for our home, which we continue to enjoy. This was the happy beginning of a wonderful working relationship. Tony King's art focused on nature and alerted us to its beauty and its energetic presence in our world. He sensed a similar commitment in the work of Alex. Brother Thomas's words come to mind. The routine of life holds us in the readiness for the events of the soul. The privilege of discovering and then sharing the art that resonates with us is well demonstrated in the 3 exhibits of Alex's art that we have held since meeting her 7 years ago. She's been a caretaker on the Isle of Shoals for 25 years, where she lives alone on one of the islands for 7 months each year. The opportunity for solitude and focus has been a main reason for this choice, giving her space to explore the nature around her and the spirit within her. Art at its best allows us each to enter a new or old space of the spirit and be awakened or renewed. Upon meeting Alex and her art, we were definitely engaged and energized spiritually and emotionally. Thomas also wrote, "The inner road is the only road that will humanize the world." Alex has been able to access her inner world, and in doing so, has alerted us to our potential to honor, to preserve, and to be in touch with nature. We have asked Dr. Carl Herbert, a dear friend, collector, and curator as well, to join us in a conversation after we view a very wonderfully, recently finished documentary on Alex, which we will share today. The format, therefore, will be different than in the past. After this brief introduction, we'll look at the video and then begin a discussion. The video, entitled Wild/Life, the Quiet Island of Alexandra de Steiguer, photographs by Alex de Steiguer. Together we'll watch it and then we'll comment on it, where Dr. Herbert, otherwise known as Rusty, and I will explore specific works from the present exhibition with an eye to the artistic and the spiritual dimensions of these works. As a guiding thought, why not reflect on the works of Thomas again? There are things within us that find resonance with things outside us. Let's look at the film together. Hopefully all of you enjoyed watching this rather extraordinary document. For me, it brought to mind rather quickly a number of brief phrases that Rusty and I will try to explore while looking at some of the work. One, windows to the soul. I was very moved by her description of her cleaning her windows in order to provide her with the frame through which to see, to appreciate, to integrate, to enjoy, and to share. And another were her, what I would call 3 S's: sacred, sublime, and solitude, the 3 S's in her words and images as we went through. How does one even begin to think about what is sublime and relate to it? How important is solitude? And I would add silence in our world of immense noise and distraction. And finally, the notion of how do we, in this world, continue to observe the notion of sacredness. And how do all three of those then combine in her work as an invitation, I think, to all of us to contemplate our place in the world and to somehow engage with her art as a means of re-engagement. So I've asked Rusty to choose images that certainly both speak to him, but also appeal to our ability to think about, analyze, and look at the work. So if we could look at the first one, it would be great. And Rusty, you're up.
Well, let me just say a few words about Alex's work and who Alex is. Alex is a photographer in the sense that we're looking at her photographs, but Alex as an individual is exploring who she is, what her relationship to the world is, and through her eyes, we get to do the same thing for our lives. So these images that she creates are images that come from a very deep emotional place. They're not images of people running around or beaches with sailboats or things like that. These are very elemental, black and white, mostly silver gel photographs, which allow her to express what I believe she's feeling inside. And she's not making these photographs necessarily to show us anything specific. She's, I believe, making these photographs to emote, to bring out what she's registered in herself. And so if you allow yourself the process of sort of identifying with her, these images, simple as they may be, they're all composed of water, land, and that could be rock, it could be trees, it could be some weeds as this is, and generally, occasionally a house and the sky. And with those basic elements, she creates an emotion. And I think Ellen Spring talked about the emotion that exists in these photographs. And it is a remarkable collection of images which will take you through a gamut of emotions, because I think to a great extent, they're beautiful simplicity. One of the things that we'll see in these images as we go through them, and I would encourage you to think about, where's the air? You can't see air. We're not going to be able to see that, but you think about it as you look at the clouds in this image and you think something might be blowing those clouds, and you look at the plants that are there. This is almost, an image that, as many of her images, and she actually calls them denizens, starts to become almost human or animated in a way that inanimate objects are never normally looked at. This could be someone's nice flowy hair that we're looking at if you allow yourself to get into it this way. And I think that concept of the presence of wind when you can't see wind, an emotion when there is no visible emotion, it's what emotes inside of you, is so beautifully projected in her works. And this is an example. I love particularly, Bernie, the sky images that she includes, because you really get the three elements for me. That is land, water, and air, or I should say sky. And it just, you look at those clouds and you look at the land and you look at the plants and you think, God, what an amazing combination of things. So, this is what black and white photography is capable of. And I think Carl talked about Ansel Adams, Weston, Minor White. This is the kind of photograph that brings out an emotional aspect to us, even though it's in its utmost simplicity. So this is a lovely, lovely image that projects that for me.
I think it works very much for me as well in terms of the sense of movement and presence in it. Thomas also wrote, which I love, artists are the discoverers and the custodians of the unlooked for. They see beyond, but they stay the course. So the capacity of Alex in this case to allow us to step out of where we are and step into the space that she preserves for us or identifies for us is an extraordinary gift. Next image.
I think also the
Sure.
concept of simplicity that she chooses. This is a lifestyle that she chooses because it resonates. It's in that realm of solitude, not loneliness, but being alone, that these things begin to resonate. And she's now been able to create those images for us to sort of have a little tiny window into the same thing. We don't have to go live on the island of shoals. We're not either obliged to or able to, but what she captures when she's out there, and she mentions it in the video beautifully, over a long period of time, the feelings and the thoughts and the creativity come to her. She's able to now allow us, if we're open to it, to appreciate those little vignettes in each one of these.
So then I was not going to use this quote now, but I'll use it now in relation to what you said, because one of the 3 S's was solitude. And Thomas wrote, prayer, meditation, silence, and solitude are all keys to awakening and nurturing the power of intuition. So by integrating herself into that space, she intuits and then provides us with some access to that space in an extraordinary way. So now we made it to the next image.
Well, I like this image, and there are multiple ones. I could have put 3 or 4 up here, but one of the perspectives, compositional perspectives that Alex uses a fair amount, and she talks about it herself, is this linear progression. It could be a crack that moves. It's in this case, it's a series of stones. We'll see a series of puddles, but the sort of linear journey, if you will, does 2 things. It takes you out, and she described it as taking her out from the rocks into the sea and then maybe into the sky to the horizon. It also brings you in. It also brings what's out there in. So this sort of push-pull that she creates with this particular framing of either rocks or a tree potentially, we'll see a couple of more, take you on a little short journey. It sort of makes you more a part of the experience. It's a mechanism for bringing you into the photograph. You know, in painting, there's that line that, you know, the resolving line that takes you to a certain point and allows you to get into a picture. And she's actually doing that with a number of these photographs, bringing you in. And that's sort of like an invitation for you to experience what we just talked about. It's sort of here's how you can get in. Look at this, follow this. And what if we followed that path? Where would it take us? Or what if somebody on the outside, on the other side of that rock came in, they would come into our world. So she does a beautiful job of framing the images and perhaps selecting pieces of them to do that, as a mechanism for entering and appreciating what she's created. This is just one of them.
I was struck by her comments about being tearful or tearing up at certain moments because of her ability to engage with and be moved by the beauty of the world around her. And the intensity of the black and white, of the detail in this piece, certainly brings me to much that same point. It creates for me an awareness, an engagement with the details, the cracks and crevices of the stones in nature that somehow transform the image itself into more than a work of art, into an invitation to be other than who we are and what we are, and to stop and to pause for a moment and to realize that those tears of joy are an indication that we all can celebrate nature and then work to preserve it.
Absolutely. So this, again, this number of people have shown this image, but just for the quick process of looking again at being invited in, the 3 pools make a line, and they make a line out or they make a line in. So again, it's almost like those are stepping stones. They're pools of water. They're not stepping stones, and sometimes you will see actual footprints or stepping stones that lead in. But once again, central in this photograph is this linear progression of moving out or moving in. The beauty of this photograph, in addition to that, is simply the elements that she's captured, and then the sort of relationships. The idea that the pools are reflecting the sky. And so somehow those two are joined, and then the sky joins the water and the water joins the rocks. And so this concept of relationships, it's not a dependency, but it is a presence of all the elements, the three major elements that are present in almost all of her photographs are really very beautifully displayed here. I mean, as you say, Bernie, the rocks themselves have this, and she mentions how she feels this affinity for what rocks represent, the long term, not the instant gratification. It's more, these have been here for years and years, and they will be here for many years beyond our short existence. So the solidness of the rocks, the clouds, the brilliance of the water, and then the reflection, it's really very beautifully done.
An issue of how you create, I'm still back there, sorry, how you create a sacred space. So tribes, nations have created, in quotes, or built buildings that they call sacred spaces, rather than to understand that the world around us, when we have a guide, also houses so many sacred spaces. And in a certain way, the approach of the three pools up to the massing of the stone is almost an approach to an altar, if you will, for me. There's a sense of silence and holiness, beauty and quietude that is so rare in our world. This is one of the images that she had chosen as well to create as a digital print. So she was able to enlarge it to nearly 40 by 30 inches. And both the small scale silver gelatin print and then the larger one is an invitation, visually, emotionally, and I think spiritually, to move into a space that most of us rarely get to. So that whenever a work of art can actually do that for us, then we have been blessed. Now I'm ready for the next one, sorry.
Well, I think too, Bernie, just you mentioned the process of enlarging. This is new, I think, for Alex, that you and she talked about the fact that a bigger image might carry even a more powerful feeling. And I think that is one of the images that accomplish that. It's funny because some photographs are, and I think this is one in particular, and we'll talk more about it, but are more powerful in a smaller format. And then there are other images that become more powerful even as you enlarge them. And I think that having her work with the concept of an enlarged image, it has worked out very nicely in several of the images. And I guess they are digital, is that right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Digital has gotten to be an incredibly accurate, qualitative process that years ago you lost a lot of the grays in. Now that's not the case. There's some incredible processes for making what was a silver gel into a digital image without losing much of the importance of that particular image. So I think it's been a real pleasure seeing some of these images in a bigger format. This is one of my favorite images that she created, and I put this in once again. See the stones. There's an invitation to enter this photograph. It's even augmented by the trees and the sort of cluster that you walk through. It reminded me a little of a photograph that Eugene Smith made, and it was The Family of Man. Those of you who may have seen that many, many years ago, then there's a little couple of young children, boy and a girl, walking into a group of trees holding hands, and it's almost like they're being wrapped around by those trees. And there's no people here. Now there's a house, which is a little bit more of humankind, if you will, but it's just a structure, but it's an invitation to walk in. It's an invitation to go participate. There's a little bit more of humanity because of the house, and I'm sure she chose it, on the basis of, look, this is at the end of this walk, on the end of this journey. We are going to be human, and this is a human structure. But I think it's just an absolutely gorgeous picture. Again, brought up, I included it because of the little concept of being drawn in, one of the things you can easily do is imagine walking out, right? I mean, you're in the house and you say, oh, this is how I will leave. I will go out through that realm. But I feel better and stronger about getting drawn into it. And again, the technique, I mean, she's so good about the stones. You have to get the light on those stones to reflect, to make them present. Otherwise, they just look dark. And yet she has the beautiful imagery of the trees, which is the trees with fingers, but they're dark. And then the house, I mean, just beautifully printed. And I think that was mentioned in the video. This is what happens in the dark room and is a very, very big part of her craft.
Love it. And I also love the humility before both success and failure after waiting 5 months to see what you created. Sometimes good, sometimes not so good. The words of Thomas come to mind in a strange way because he uses the word, the inner road is the only road that will humanize the world. And in a very specific sense, this is that inner road that she's identified for all of us. Next image, please.
I keep saying this is my favorite. I think I have too many favorites. Not right. There's still in this image not quite the same idea of being drawn to a special place, but I love the connectedness of this. First of all, the clouds. And again, I'm a big favorite of her cloud pictures because I think they add such a beautiful extra dimension to her work. I mean, they're different than water, and clearly different, and yet there's a synthesis there of what is in the world. It is the air, the clouds, there is the water, and then there's the land. But here is a connection of, this, again, a point, a vanishing point, right? You follow this sort of pool down, and somewhere you think right on the other side of those rocks, it exits into the sea. But this little pool has its own almost skin texture, right? I mean, is it elephant skin or something? There's something almost animated about the water here. And then it pulls you in. And then if you get pulled in on the other side of the rocks, it lets you out again. Again, I apologize, these are my impressions, but it is again, a wonderful idea of coming in, going out, engaging in either the pool or in the bigger. It's like when she's talked about getting on the boat, you leave the dock, you head out. Well, right on the other side of the rocks is sort of where you would head out. And heading out, again, in a metaphoric way, is undertaking that personal journey. It's the road ahead, and being open to it, being adventuresome, being able to say it's out there, having left a place of known security and sort of moving forward. And whether you're doing that in a boat or internally as you try to make changes in your own life or in a perspective for the bigger world, this is just a wonderful image of multiple aspects of that put together in one place. Just, they make you think, and that's one of the real beauties of the work.
Again, going back to Thomas, is one of my favorite phrases, which you alluded to, which is risking and dreaming are primary acts of creativity.
Yeah.
And so the notion of the risk of going beyond, but yet being very present in the foreground with the, as you indicated, almost the skin-like quality of the water here, and then the invitation to somehow engage, which is well beyond us, which borders on or alerts us to the notion of the sublime. Next one, please.
This was just I think a beautiful photograph. It has a linear dimension to it. I don't think it takes you out anywhere or brings you in necessarily. The linearity of how this grows on the rock. But it's also a chance to see just how beautiful Alex's work can be, how delicate it can be. You know, you can see rocks and you can see waves and you can see, you know, things at a distance. She also has an ability to show things of great beauty in a perspective up close. And then I go back to, I don't want to miss the opportunity of talking about how she creates life out of inanimate objects. This could be someone's hair, right? It could be an animal of some sort, whatever. But in the context that she creates these images, and she calls images, some of them are rocks, this happens to be flowers. She calls them, the images are called denizens, right? Denizens are normal, the living beings that inhabit somewhere. And so she's able to take inanimate objects, and as your spirit sort of fills the photographs, like, oh my gosh, it's almost like a live rock or a live tree, or, you know, the branches fill out and it's like an arboretum of you know, sort of a lung almost. I'm sorry, being a doctor, but it's an amazing process that I think, again, an appreciation for comes from simplicity. If you put other things in these images that you call denizens, they lose the power to absorb you or to bring you to a place of understanding that's quite different than it just being a rock. You just can't do it. But in a very calm, collected, methodical way of stripping all the extras out, stripping all the things that you leave behind when you come to the Isle of Shoals, you can now feel that. And I think that's the connection she's talking about, that she feels that these are people almost, or they're as important as a living entity of some sort in her world, because she bonds to them. And I think this is just another example, but I think it's also an example of the fine detail of photography that she's able to capture.
I have always been attracted to this particular image as kind of dancing flowers, dancing movement. There's an energy in it that parallels some of the movement that the wind causes. And obviously it probably caused the movement here, but I'm just looking at it carefully. And if you cover the top flower, how the space and the entire image is totally changed. So that every detail in this is relevant to the completed experience for her and for us as viewers. The other nice thing is that this exhibition that we just did included not only images from the Isle of Shoals over these many, many years, but both images from Scotland and from Ireland. And it also reaffirmed the notion that if you're open to it and you come with a perspective, as she said, with the camera at the beginning, she was a pointer, then you see essentially similarly wherever you are, because thus you are attuned to seeing. And I think this is a wonderful example of her being elsewhere, but yet being in the same place.
Last image, Bernie, I think is one that you really like. I'm going to let you speak to it.
I didn't know I was going to, but I'm happy to. It is for me, one of the more beautiful ones. It brings together most of what you were talking about in terms of the foreground, background, the sky, the presence in the foreground of the image of the rocks.
We need to bring up that image, Rose.
We can bring up that image. That's perfect. There it is. Then, and the light in it. So I have a printout that's in front of me beside the one on the screen, which is a little bit darker, but nonetheless, there is this platform of light that is captured on the stones in the foreground, the middle ground, and then going well off into the background to the structures, which create a kind of presence, but at least for me, they are not an indication of human activity. They're more abstract forms in the midst of this otherwise organized space, and anchor it in a very beautiful way. The sky here is less troubled than some of the others and creates a sense of extraordinary calm as I look at the piece. One of the issues that Alex's work has re-emphasized from my perspective, and I think the major challenge that the gallery has always confronted is the how do you enable people to see, not only to look. And the seeing is an invitation to engaging personally and emotionally, if not spiritually, with the images. This particular piece enables me to go to a space, into a place that is inside me, and it is prompted by what Alex has managed to record that is outside of me.
So I would only add two things. One is I would invite you to feel the wind that's there. You obviously can't see it, but it just feels like it's there. And then the second is the concept of that rock being a denizen, being a part of that. It's almost as that is an equal thing to a house. Like the house is human, we made it, but that rock is in its structure and position and light, the way it's lit, the way she printed it, it becomes a very important part, equal in importance to the house, meaning all of these elements, human and otherwise, are really need to be integrated in a positive way. But it is a beautiful image.
So let me end with the notion not only from Thomas, but in general to say that I would say that virtually all the artists that we've dealt with over all these years are called to their art. The notion in German of berufen, of being called in some way. And in her case, she's been called to recognize both solitude, sacredness, and sublimity in the world around us. And then I think ultimately we're all beneficiaries. So Rusty, thank you so much for your insights and your response to the work. Thank you all for watching. Thank you, Rose, for your help.